thank you guys so much for coming. Today's discussion is going to focus on entrepreneurship, which is building or running your own business. We have 6 professionals here that are all in very different fields, all doing different things. They are going to talk to you about their experience of starting a business and running it. And we're going to jump back and forth between questions from the audience as well as questions that were sent in and submitted. So if you guys have a question, we're going to kind of break it up into some sections. Ask those questions. We want to hear them. The more questions, the better. So we want to make sure we're answering any questions you have. So before we get started and go into the questions that we had submitted, if we could, each panelist, please introduce yourself and let the kids know what you do and what your company is and how you got there.
I'm Tenerowicz with Kentner Technologies. I originally started the company to do web hosting back when most people had dial-up modems for internet access. So after I set up the company, set up networking and things like that, I realized other businesses needed help with their network security as well as setting up their infrastructure, their servers, their network electronics, their computers and things like that. So I kind of grew the web hosting business into more of a support for local companies. And then as I did it more, I expanded my clients out to pretty much around the country. So we help organizations throughout the U.S. and a little bit overseas.
Very cool. Good afternoon, Pranav, Kothari. Thanks for sharing part of your day with us. So I am a healthcare entrepreneur, physician by training, and sort of stepped out of being a clinical physician to try to solve healthcare system problems, and I think was asked to join because it's like all of us. I think we sort of have non-traditional paths. I've sort of started a business inside of a larger business, started my own company and sold that, started a policy program at a university, and now lead kind of a product for geriatrics at home, so for seniors, bringing care to them, the frailest elderly seniors, and trying to get them the care they need. What emerged, and I'll sort of pause after this, what emerged for me at least, was in all of these different elements, and it only ahaed for me about 7-8 years ago, that the theme for me as an entrepreneur became find people that need help and help them. And as I actually wake up every day and tell my teams to do that, if you found someone who needed help and helped them, you kind of did something. So that's something we can talk a little bit about, what is each of our themes as well.
Great. I am Danielle Todd. I'm the executive director and founder of Make Food Not Waste. We are a Detroit nonprofit. And I founded the organization in 2017. The reason I started it was because my passion was the environment, and I wanted to do something related to climate change. And when I did research to see what the different best solutions were to climate change, food waste reduction was at the top of the list. And so our organization focuses on food waste reduction. We work with households trying to get people at home to reduce their food waste. We do a training program for restaurants to help them cut down on the amount of food that they waste. We operate 2 kitchens in Detroit where we have a staff of professional chefs that make meals for the community every week from surplus food. And we also provide recommendations to local government and state government on policies that they can pass that will help reduce food waste.
Hi, my name is Ranya Shbeib. I am a co-founder and board member for Muslim Foster Care Association. Although my background is in education and public health, many years ago, my husband and I became licensed for foster care, and it was really through our fostering journey that we realized there were a lot of gaps in the foster care system. And me and my co-founder decided that we needed to do what we could to fill those gaps and connect the Muslim community with the foster care system. So in 2016, we started Muslim Foster Care Association, and things have been moving really fast because there's no other organization, even nationally, that is doing the work that we're doing. So we work with the Department of Health and Human Services, with private agencies, and supporting the kids as soon as they enter care to when they age out of foster care.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Lisa Kentner, and my company's Marketing Instigators. I've had the company for about 11 years, and I help small businesses, organizations, and nonprofits with their marketing efforts so that they're doing something consistently with marketing. And that includes social media, email newsletters, marketing plans, branding, some smaller websites, but just helping them put a plan together. And I sort of fell into it, to be honest. I wasn't going to do a business, and I had an opportunity to help the local library with a marketing project. And then I was like, well, other companies, and I saw a niche with small businesses where they don't have a marketing department, and they need help with the marketing because they're so busy doing the actual business. So I saw the niche and just started to grow the business. I had done a lot of networking with the companies that I had worked with prior, and that's how I grew the business, and it's been almost 11 years now, and I love what I do.
Hi, I'm Robert Bilotti. My business is Novita Training. So we are a custom learning development company, which means we create learning for organizations to train and educate their employees, customers, volunteers, et cetera. We are a small business. I have about 8 core employees, but we work with very large organizations, some of which you might have heard of. We've got Dunkin' Donuts as a client, Allstate, Red Cross, Weight Watchers, and then a lot of organizations that you've probably never heard of. We operate very much like an ad agency, so we have a creative side and an account side. We've been around for about 20 years. As far as how I got into this, like Lisa said, I sort of fell into it. I never set out to do this. To be honest with you, I never knew this was a business. And I think that's one of the messages I'd like to get across today is there's a lot of ways you can have a business, a lot of ways to make money, a lot of ways to do different things beyond what you might see in your everyday life. With that said, I feel like this suits me for a lot of different reasons, and one of which is the word theme came up, and throughout my life there's been 2 themes, creativity, specifically writing, and wanting to do my own thing. Non-traditional, I think, was another word. And that started when I was even younger than you guys. I could think back to things that relate to what I do now. So my other message would be, instead of looking at specific businesses or jobs, look at those themes, because I think you can do things inside out and it'll direct you to a different path and maybe one that's better suited for you.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. So first off, just to give you guys some context up here too, Ms. Todd and Ms. Shbeib run nonprofits, correct? Mm-hmm. The other 4 panelists are for-profit companies. Now, what does that mean? So if you wouldn't mind, either Ms. Shbeib or Ms. Todd, kind of explaining the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. How do you make money? Are all of your employees volunteer, or how does that work?
I can take it, and then you can. Okay. So we are a nonprofit, which means that we're categorized by the government that we exist for social good. So we have to do something to make the world a better place, by definition. In exchange for that, we don't pay taxes, but we also don't have ownership of the organization. So you imagine the organization almost belongs to the public in that way. So I don't own the organization in the way that you all own your companies. All of our funding comes from philanthropy, so that can look like either from government grants, foundations, different institutions, corporations might donate, individuals donate. And so it's kind of a misnomer where the word nonprofit, it sort of implies that you can't make any money, which that's not necessarily true. What it means is that at the end of the year, if you haven't spent everything that you've taken in, you have to reinvest it into the organization. You can't pay it out to employees. You have to use it for continuing the organization. So in fact, you have to have a profit, because if you don't, you will close. So we're similar to a business in that we have expenses. We need to have revenue to cover those expenses. It's just a difference of what we can do with that difference in revenue at the end of the year. All of ours, we do have volunteers, but our staff is compensated, so everyone is paid. They're paid just like they would be paid at a for-profit company with, benefits and the whole thing. So typically salaries aren't typically as high as they are in for-profit companies. However, there are many nonprofits that people make do very well. So hospitals are nonprofits, universities are nonprofits. There's a lot of institutions out there that you may not realize they're actually classified as a nonprofit, but again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not profitable. I don't know if you want to add anything.
That was very comprehensive.
Perfect. Well, one thing that I heard from the panelists and all of you express, and one of the things that the students asked a lot about is kind of how did you see or how did you identify that niche that you guys are in as a need? Like, why did you feel like, all right, there's a definite need here that I can fulfill? What was the signs you were looking for to say, all right, it's now time for me to step away from what I'm doing or make this my sole focus? How did you land on that of, all right, this is an area that is not being, the demand is not being fully met. I feel like I can fill that gap. So I'm going to open that up to anybody that would like to talk about that.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. My first client was the Waterford Township Public Library, and they had a marketing project, but they needed somebody to manage the project. And it was the Bill and Melissa Gates Foundation had this big marketing program. It was What Do You Geek? And they needed somebody to manage the program. So I did that, and then I started talking to business owners that I knew through previous networking, and they're all like, oh, I need marketing help, And so I saw the need there, and with social media, it takes a lot of time, but they didn't have the time to do it. So I kind of focused on learning as much about social media as I could, and then holding the business owners accountable to their marketing. Marketing is one of those things that it can get pushed off to the side as they're taking care of their business. So I help them focus on it and either do the tasks for them or hold them accountable to the marketing. So I just saw small businesses typically don't have a marketing department, and there was a need there. And so I just kind of fill that need. And I like the small businesses. That's I enjoy working with them.
Robert, I'm going to come to you too as well, and Pranav, I want to hear from you as well. You said you kind of fell into it. Were you working within the industry before?
No. So I was actually
how did you
working for an ad agency as a writer, and did a project in the learning space. And I'll be completely honest with you guys. It was about money at that time. The client that we did that work for just offered me a lot of money to start freelancing for them. And it was a no-brainer for me. However, I will say this. It was always in the back of my mind to do this. I think I was 26 at the time when this happened. And like I said to you guys, when I was in high school, I had a dog walking business before it was cool. And I had a food delivery business before DoorDash even existed. I always was thinking with an entrepreneurial mind. So I was looking for something like this. And then I did that. I freelanced until I could make it more of a business where I would start having employees, making it more legitimate.
And what does freelance mean for the students?
Sure, freelance is you don't work for one company. You generally work for yourself. You usually make more money like per hour, but you also have to pay your own taxes, and the company can let you go at any moment. So I went from a freelancer working for one company at a time to bringing on business development people. In my world, they're called instructional designers. Those are the people that create learning. And that's what I'm trained in as well. I got a certificate in that way after the fact of college, because like I said, I never knew this world existed. And then we had multiple clients going at once, multiple employees, so it became more of a legitimate business. So that's what I meant by falling into it, but yet it was predestined, if that makes sense.
Sure. Pranav, you had something?
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to share was that I was, as I mentioned earlier, kind of going down the doctoring pathway. And I think a lot of folks that probably up here have changed careers along the way. And so that's another thing as entrepreneurs. Probably comes out as a theme because when I was doing medicine, I was recognizing that it didn't feel like it was always the best experience for patients. That was sort of the problem I identified. And I'd be kind of in med school or clinical delivering care and thinking it could be done better. And so then I got curious. I was like, well, how could it get done better? Why doesn't it get done better? And so I thought at first I was going to take a 1-year sabbatical, meaning you take time off from something to do something else intensive. And that 1-year sabbatical became a whole career where I kind of caught the bug around boy, you can identify something that doesn't work, and you can find ways to try to solve that problem. And so, first, actually, I went in to do traditional consulting. I thought that was the thing to do. So I kind of left clinical medicine. I was going to do a year in traditional consulting. I got lucky because they wanted to build a business within that traditional consulting firm, and they asked if I would build that. We built it, and then we were able to transact it or sell it, is what you'd think. And I thought to myself, wow, like that's pretty cool. Like you can find a problem, you can get someone to help fund the problem to solve, and then if you solve it, you can actually create value for somebody, right? Create value for the patients, create kind of financial value, create kind of good in the world. And that's sort of when I stepped out of traditional consulting even and said, I think there's other problems I want to try to start solving. So a little bit of kind of the pathway there.
Yeah, and you know what, that actually leads into the next question. And Brian, I'm going to target you on this one. Is you said you started out your business aimed in one direction, and now over time you saw some more opportunities and expanded into that. How did you how do you identify those opportunities? Was it through just networking, or how did you feel like that was the direction to go with your business?
There are a lot of different ways we do that. With the IT industry, it changes drastically every 5 years. So we kind of look at the trends of what's going to be popular in 2 or 3 years in terms of information technology, and what do we need to do. And then we do change drastically what we do sometimes. I don't want to bore everyone with technical details, but the way we set up a system now versus 20 years ago is completely different. It's much easier now, it's faster, but some of the core concepts are still the same. And for us, it's staying on top of what's going to be important in 2 or 3 years from now in terms of how should the schools network be set up so that it's better and will keep working for 10 years, because they may not change it every year. So we have to stay a little bit ahead of the curve. We have to train a lot on different things and then see which of our clients want to try those or find new clients that want to try new things.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so we're going to go to the audience and hear some questions. Like I said, I know a lot of you guys submitted questions about entrepreneurship or how do you start a business. The first round of questions, if you guys have any questions related to identifying, how do you even identify it? Any questions related to that? What do we got? Okay, so we're going to have a microphone come around. What do we got? Kathy? Got a question right in the middle there. Omar's got a question for us. Come on up. Be gentle with it.
So identifying as in, so like, what do you mean by identifying first?
What question do you have?
My question is that, what factors do you think led to your success, like in your businesses? Sure. And as for-profit and nonprofit.
I think for Muslim Foster Care Association, we were very successful because there was nobody else doing the work. So once we identified that there was a need in the community and it was an unmet need, and we were able to create a model to address those needs, then even organizations from out of state would contact us and ask if we would be willing to train them in how to replicate the model so that they can do the work that we're doing in other areas. But again, I think the success was really identifying that there was an unmet need in the community, and that really got us going. Another thing I think is that we were able to identify and have a vision that, again, nobody else had kind of tackled this as a mission. I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought.
Happens. It's okay.
It happens. All right, I'll move on to someone else.
One
then.
of the questions I was reading that you guys submitted, it said, how do you have a business when there's so much competition? And I think the answer is you just do it really well. I mean, there's very few new ideas in the world. They're mostly regurgitated anyway. So just do it with a different spin, do it really, really well, because I think that's what's been the key to our success. We don't do things that there's 100 other companies that aren't out there that do as well. We just do it really well with a lot of different, good value, good customer service, good products. Yeah. So probably not revolutionary.
All right.
But it's a cool continuation, right? Because you find the need, then you have the vision, and then you have like execution. And that's sort of the thing that a mentor once told me when I was starting this out. They said you have to have this fanatical focus on execution. That like once you find what you're going to do, that's going to be really, really important.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we got another question? Come on up.
So once you discovered your passion for like what you wanted to create, how did you assemble your business plan and how did you like set on about it? Also, how long did it take?
Great So how long did it take you to get started, and what was that first step once you realized this is what I want to do? What was step number one? And that kind of leads to the next set of questions too. So
I think a lot of it was trial and error, and sometimes I would say, somebody would ask, oh, can you do this? And I'd be like, sure, I can do that. And then I'd have to figure out how to do it. So it helped me grow, and just a lot of learning, like trying something. And an example I can give you is when a client says that or somebody wants help, marketing help, I make them fill out a questionnaire first. And that's my little test, because if they won't fill out that questionnaire first, they're too busy, then they're probably going to be too busy for me to work with them, and that's not going to be good for us. So sometimes you set up little tests or steps along the way so that you know that this will be a good match. And that's something you learn too. In the beginning, you're like, oh, I just need business. And so I took some clients that I shouldn't have taken. And so now I'm a lot more picky when I'm talking to a client. It needs to be a good fit for everybody.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, that when you think about the first step, it sounds like all of us sort of share this, is that you kind of put something out there. You try one thing, and then you keep learning from that one thing, and then the second thing and third thing, and you fine tune it. And I think before I started this, I always thought about entrepreneurs as they had a set idea, and they knew what that end goal was, and they were working towards it. And now I've realized in my experience, it's been the opposite of, I kind of had an idea, but I'm letting it unfold and grow as I get more information from the different people we work with and the different, the input. So it's actually a relief, because you don't have to necessarily know exactly how it's going to look. You can just kind of follow along and let it inform itself as it grows.
So I'm going to add on to your question as well with the business plan part. Did any of you guys sit down and write a full business plan before getting started? Did you get started and write it along the way? How long did that take you to get to kind of the state where you're at right now? Like, I mean, a lot of the kids, here you got to write a business plan before you get started. What does that mean? What does that look like? Did you do that? When does that come into play?
It's on my to-do list.
I think
I have the
for
software.
There we go.
I was
ahead.
going to say, and with nonprofit, my experience was that I don't have a background in nonprofit development, and so again, starting from scratch, but I had a vision, right? So I knew where I wanted to get, but once people start hearing about the work that you're doing and they share the same passion as you, then people will start lending their help to you and guide you along the way. And we were very fortunate to have a couple of very good strategic planners that were able to come in, and we were able to consult with them, and they donate their time and really guide us along the way.
Can I piggyback on something Danielle said? I thought it was really important. And that is, I think there's a misconception that you have this idea and everything goes beautifully and you're doing exactly that and it's making you tons of money or helping a lot of people. And there was the best question I saw on the list that we got was, what's the risk that you didn't realize until later on? And I think a huge mistake people make is they don't do a proof of concept. And they don't give up when they should give up. And I know that sounds terrible, but sometimes your idea is just, it's in your mind, it's brilliant, and it's just not landing.
And what is a proof of concept? What is
Proof of concept is you're proving that you have a viable idea. And before you go and blanket the world with it, maybe try it in a small little way and then tweak it and adjust it. And because chances are we all started out, we never thought we would be where we are now. It goes like this. And sometimes you have to say, this isn't working. And even if you're incredibly passionate about it, people are fickle. And they like what they like, and it might not be what you like.
Kyle, maybe I'll speak a little to the business plan part of the question, because in a way, the purpose of a business plan, on one hand, is to document what you're trying to do, what your problem is, how you're going to, what your solution is, how you're going to solve it, what the economics are. But a lot of times you can just organically move your business forward, I think is the stories we're hearing here. If you're looking for investors, it becomes a little bit different. So I've done a few different things. When we've actually gone to look for funding, then the business plan became more important, because then you're actually asking somebody to make a bet, a financial bet on what you're trying to build. And they're going to really want to look at exactly how you're going to do it. But I wouldn't let that, so when I was thinking about it early on, I thought I had to write a business plan. I can't remember who, I think you asked the question. I thought I had to like get all of this stuff down. And it wasn't as daunting as it seems at first. Like, it was really a collaborative tool. Like, it helped me get my thoughts together. And then I got to share it with some advisors who like helped me fine tune it to get it ready to actually show to an investor, which is sort of the process that ultimately kind of helped. And the funny thing that happened with one of the investors was they kind of had looked at the business plan, and then when we got in the meeting, they kind of pushed it aside and they said, okay, most business plans don't end up the way you think, kind of what you were saying, what Bob was saying. He said, now I want to get to know you. How are you going to do it? Like, what are you as an individual going to bring to the table to turn this into success? So it's like a piece of the puzzle, but really it's going to be all these other things we're talking about, sort of that grit that you have to do it yourself.
One thing too, I think there's a lot of resources to help you get started with your business. Like Oakland County, it used to be the one-stop shop, and now it's Oakland County Small Business Association or something. There's a lot of free resources. And I fell into that too. I happened to go in the office for something else, and I saw, oh, we have free counseling for potential business owners. I was like, I might as well try that. And I was connected with a lady who had done what I was thinking about doing, and so she kind of took me under her wing and then introduced me to some really key players that have helped me, that I'm still working with. So look for the free resources too. There's a lot of things out there that can help you get your business, or it can introduce you to somebody that maybe you have an area of your business that's not like an attorney or accountant. You can get help that way too, and there's a lot of resources out there.
Other questions from the audience? What do you got?
All right, we have one here.
Yep, go ahead.
Is starting a business expensive? And if yes, like, how were you guys able to get that initial sum of money? And I guess if no, is there like an example of a business that you could start without sort of like a big initial investment?
Great question.
I think it depends on the business. Mine, I need a computer and a phone, so I don't have a huge investment. If you're going to have a brick and mortar where you're going to have a office or a building, there's a whole, you've got to rent or buying a building, so it just really depends on the type of business. And are you going to work from home? Are you going to have an office? A lot of things like that. Are you having employees? It just really depends on the type of business.
I would say most businesses start without a lot of money. I think with Silicon Valley and how prominent that is, everybody thinks everyone's pitching to venture capitalists and angel investors every day, and it's a small portion of the puzzle, I would say.
I guess it's expensive in the sense that a lot of businesses, you don't make a lot of money in the beginning. So you sort of start at maybe a lower than you would have if you just had a traditional job. But a lot are not capital intensive in the front end.
We got time for one more. You want to go over there, and then we're going to come back to the other questions. Don't worry, we're going to have more time for questions too. Go ahead.
How do you start a business from zero?
From zero?
Yeah.
Like with zero money?
Like yeah.
Or zero everything.
That's a pretty big question. So that's a pretty big question, right?
I don't know, Kyle. Do you want to?
Let me kind of narrow it down. Yeah, exactly. I think you could say it depends for that one. But all right, students, bring it on back, please and thank you. Okay. I guess let's narrow that down to, you've got the idea, you've got the direction. How do you get that first client? How do you get that first revenue source to trust in you? Maybe let's narrow it down to that. Like, how do you get someone to buy into what you're doing and supporting? Or if it's a nonprofit, how do you get that funding coming your way? I'll leave that open to anybody here.
You have to learn how to do sales. And most people that start a business don't necessarily have sales experience. So they have an idea, and they're an expert at that usually, and they're very good at that, but they have to learn how to sell. And I read books. I worked with some friends who trained me a little bit, and then you go out and do it, and you find clients.
Yeah, I love the learning part. I think a big part of it is to stay curious, like even once you have your idea, you don't have to have all the answers. You have to go find all the answers. And so you got to find the people who will help you network a lot, be introduced to people who might like your product in the marketing sense, create the materials to make it look good, that explains it well, good communication skills. It's kind of really all the, I just heard Lynn talk about the 10 IB learner profile stuff the other day. It's like those 10 things. Like you do those 10 things well, you'll find people who need your product actually.
And so we're gonna, yep, go ahead. Got one last one. Is it a quick one? Go ahead.
Oh, here.
Yep, sorry.
Sorry,
Caught you
and
off
then we
guard.
had one more here. But.
Oh, you got one more over there too. All right, we're gonna do two more. How about that? That's okay. This is great.
I don't think my first question, the answer to my first question was satisfactory because like I only got one.
Okay, what do you got, Omar? Bring it on. Children, students. Sure. Restate your question then, so we can see what we can do.
All right. So, what are the factors to your success? Like, what do you think are the biggest factors to your success?
Factors to your success? Oh my gosh. I mean,
All right, students.
how much time do you have, right? I mean,
Right.
you need an ego and expect it to be battered every day. You need to know yourself. You need to trust in yourself. You need to trust in others. The biggest thing for me to go from here to here was people, meaning finding others that I could trust. And that's a huge part. I think with businesses, you go in plateaus. You're going along, I think everybody thinks it's like this, and I think for me, it's been more like that. I don't know about you guys, and you make leaps. And you make those leaps by learning something. Brian said, you have to be a salesperson. I never wanted to be a salesperson, and it's amazing how much you have to sell every day. And I think everybody here would probably say it's a huge part of what you're doing. So learn what you're good at and learn what you're not. However, there's some things you're just gonna have to force yourself to do because you can't hire, I'm not good at sales, so I'm gonna hire a salesperson. Well, when you're starting at zero, like he said, you don't have the money, so you have to just do it. It's not for everybody, entrepreneurship. It's risk-taking. Like I said, it's swallowing your pride a lot because at the end of the day, you have to make it work.
I think positive mindset too. You can't go into oh, this is terrible, I hate this. So you have to keep your head right and focus on really where you want to go and what you want and write your goals down. It's 42% more likely something will happen if you write it down. So I'm a huge goal writing person. And then what's the activities that are going to get you to that goal is probably even more important. But really positive mindset. And then when you were talking about you don't have money to hire people, don't be afraid, depending on the business, to trade services. I do marketing, so I've gotten yoga, I trade a lot of stuff. So don't be afraid to do that depending on your business if you can trade services with people. Or you help somebody and they help you in different areas.
Perfect. All right, and we got one last question here before we go back to some other ones.
I know not everyone has a positive or optimistic outlook when they're starting something new, like a business. So have you guys ever felt like this is going to be a complete failure, I'm going to end up broke, anything like that? Have you guys ever felt like
every day?
Yeah, that's normal.
Okay. That's a great question too. So when you guys have those moments, because as entrepreneurs, you are the business. So if the business fails, that's coming back on you. So how do you deal with that when you feel like there are, your back's up against the wall? How do you, what's your first go-to to handle those tough situations or to make yourself feel a little more secure in your own business?
Yeah,
or a nonprofit as well, which is a business.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's not like you get to a certain point and you think, okay, I'm here and it's all great and it's going to be great every day. It's like anything else. You have good days, you have bad days. Sometimes you have big wins. Some days you have big losses. I would say, I try in some ways to separate the organization from me personally, and I really treat it as what our organization does and the service that we provide. And And that helps that detach it a little bit. So everything isn't always about me. You know, we have a team of people, we have a greater cause, we have an issue that we're working on. It also makes it easier to sell because I'm not selling myself when I'm out either talking to a donor or talking with people that work with us in our services. I always have in mind the concept that we're selling and the work that we do. So it doesn't feel as personal, and that seems to help kind of take the pressure off a little bit.
And that's kind of good advice, whether you're an entrepreneur or not an entrepreneur, actually, because I've been in roles where I haven't been kind of the founder or running it. And there are days where I feel exactly as you described. This whole thing's not working. I don't really like what I'm doing. It's going to fail. I'm doing a bad job. But I think if you can kind of detach a little bit from like the business, the work, from yourself and kind of come back to the resilience in yourself, like believe in yourself. I think someone earlier, or maybe in our prep call, said bet on yourself. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're not an entrepreneur, like bet on yourself, like get to a place where you want to bet on yourself. And that helps me get through those hard days, actually.
And I would add to have the confidence that things will go wrong. That's a guarantee. And when they go wrong, you will be able to solve the problem. So you won't be able to prevent bad things from happening, but have the confidence in yourself that you can deal with whatever comes to you, and you can figure out a solution, and that also relieves some of that pressure.
I'm sure everybody up here has made mistakes that have cost them a lot of money. And you learn from that. You learn quickly or you stop doing it. And once you do that, you realize every day you're going to do some things wrong. And you're going to make some mistakes. And you learn from it. And you get better at it. And you'll never be perfect. It's like any exams that you take in here. Sometimes some of the questions, they don't go your way. But that doesn't mean you don't understand everything or the whole exam's going to be a failure. It's just a small part didn't go your way. And it's important to keep it in perspective.
I think the word detachment was used, and that's a great word. We could talk about, we always hear passion, that word. And I have mixed feelings about doing what you're passionate about, because I think to some degree, yes, but it also can get you into trouble, and it also could be very detrimental. And what I mean by that, you don't want to hate what you do, but when what you do is mixed up in what you love and you're trying to make money suddenly about it, it gets weird sometimes, and you start to not love it. So I think the more less emotional you can think about your business, sometimes the better.
I guess I disagree a little. It's like my baby. I feel like it's like, oh, I'm gonna, this is so. I have, and maybe that's just me personally. I don't detach. It's like it's mine. It's me. It's about me and how I relate to my customers. So that's what I pride myself on, is that I will take care of my customers and clients, and that they, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I think that's a big thing. Even as students, if you can do the follow-up, you're way ahead of a lot of other people, because out in the world today, very few people follow up on what they say they're going to do. And I think that's a big advantage. If I say I'm going to call you tomorrow at 10, guess what? I'm calling you tomorrow at 10, and people will go, oh my gosh. They act surprised that I did what I said I was going to do. So I think that's something that that you can put yourself ahead if you do the follow-up.
Absolutely. Okay.
One last thing on that is, but the thing you can control, and follow-up's a good example, is like how you make decisions and what you do. You can't always control the outcome of those things. And so that's sort of what, as I'm hearing you guys talk, it reminded me, that's kind of what I lean on. And I think about that actually a lot in parenting, in fact, because we make mistakes as parents. You can ask Nikhil. We've made mistakes. But in our house, you have to be able to explain why you made the decisions you made. And so kind of forces you to be thoughtful about the decisions. And so I kind of carry that into work, which is if you're making decisions based on the information you have and you're doing the best you can, that's all you can kind of do. Beyond that, there are a lot of unknowns and variables in the world that you can't control. And that's sort of how I do it.
And that actually leads into another question we got from a lot of students is, they view businesses and people tied with businesses. If that business goes under, do you lose your house? Do you lose everything? The risks that are involved with running a business. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, obviously, thinking about, if I do lose my business, I'm going to lose everything else. What kind of protections, I don't want to get into the weeds too much on this, but, are there sorts of protections that if the business doesn't go well, what does it, or how are you kind of protecting yourself, I guess, and making, because working for somebody else, yes, you might get laid off, but you can go get another job. But if you lose your business, do you lose anything personally? Could anyone talk to the students about that, kind of how it is a little bit separated from the individual and how you're protected a little bit as a business owner from that risk?
I can talk about that a little bit. If you set it up correctly, a lot of people just start a business and don't set up a separate entity. So like I have a Kentner Technologies LLC. It's a limited liability company. I have limited liability. So if somebody sues my company, unless I do something really horrible, really unethical, they really can't come after me personally. So if I just don't pay a bill, let's say I pass away and don't pay a bill, they can't get my house. They can get the assets of the business perhaps, but in reality, if you set it up correctly and work with a professional on this, you can limit your risk considerably.
Yeah, accountant, lawyer, insurance. Those are the three things that protect you.
Well, that was the next question I was going to ask is, do you have to have all these, like you guys have talked about a little bit, you've got to be every part of the business, but how do you gain that knowledge? How did you personally gain the knowledge to run your own business? Was it through college? Like what degree did you look at in college? Was it from working at a certain company and seeing how it was run there? Or was it just talking and networking? What was your personal way of figuring out how do I do this and then making it happen?
I think find somebody that's doing what you're trying to do. Find a mentor, somebody that's good at either good at what you're not or good at an area that you need help with. And I call people all the time and ask for help, and it's amazing. And a lot of times too, if I'm in this market, I may call somebody in a different state and go, hey, I kind of do what you do. How did you get there? And you'll be amazed to ask for help. People will help you. But then what you need to do is give back. And so if somebody's asking you for help, like I'll take some clients on and I don't charge them because they're doing good work, and so I don't charge them, or somebody new, help them. So it's kind of a go ask for help, but then give it back too, I think is very important.
I think that's a good point, is that you'll never know everything you need to know. And if you wait until you know everything before you start a business or start an opportunity, it'll never happen. And so you can, even now, I have an MBA, I have years of experience in the business world, and I still hire an accountant. Our first hire was an accountant for just that reason, because you can't possibly know every detail that you need to know. So part of it is, like you said, hiring areas where you don't know, or you're not good at, or you don't like to do. That's a good rule of thumb. But just know that you're not going to know everything before you get started.
And then one last question for you from me, and then we'll go back to you guys as well, is talking about kind of that balance. Like, obviously you guys are all entrepreneurs here. We all have stuff going on outside of work. As somebody that's starting a business, how do you know, where your line is? Like, how do you reach that balance, or do you reach that balance? Like, a lot of people think when you start a business, it's going to take up every minute of every day. You're doing all these jobs. Do you get to a point where you can start handing stuff off? Do you do that right away? How did you achieve your balance between your work and your home and your other interests and opportunities? So,
I think you have to take time for yourself, no matter where you are with your business part of it, because you need to clear your head. And so you shouldn't feel bad about, I'm going to go work out, or I'm going to go take a walk. You need to have those kinds of things. And I think people are scared to do that, and then they get so uptight about the business, where if you would take some time, clear your head, you come back fresh, and you know, new ideas come to you. So I think it's really important to have that balance, and it's hard to do in the beginning, but schedule that time for yourself. It's really important.
It's one of the coolest things, though, about running our own businesses is that you can control your time a lot, though. And
That's the
so
best part.
it is, while I did talk about detachment from like company and personal, actually, I've always integrated my work into the work day, because once we had kids, I wanted to be at all the activities that they were doing.
Like speaking to the students.
Like speaking to the
Look at
students
this.
is a great example. Most of these activities happen like during the school day, actually, or like right after school. And so if I want to coach something, or if I want to come in and do a panel, I just sort of weave that into the day. And then on the other hand, like they have to weave, I've been blessed that they're willing to weave their world around our work a little bit as well. Like I would be driving our kids to music class, and they had to be really quiet because I was doing a conference call, but then we were going to get to music class. So there's some really cool flexibility when you run your own business too, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a huge motivator. Money can't be the only thing that drives you. And choosing the lifestyle is, I totally agree. It's one of the biggest benefits to me. My company could probably be 5 times bigger than it is right now, and I've controlled that. I did not want that. And the reason why I didn't want it was because I like the lifestyle that me and my family have. We've taken extended trips. I play tennis during the day. I'm learning drums at night. There's lots of great benefits beyond money, and lifestyle is definitely one of them. But I think that also comes back to knowing yourself. And I think I mentioned before, kind of designing this from the inside out, and that's knowing what life you want and going that way, letting that drive you.
Very good. All right, we got probably time for 2 or 3 quick questions. Go ahead.
So this is kind of been going back a bit. So we talked about like finding gaps and like finding your right idea. But like when you start like running your business and when you start your business, like what are like the behind the scenes things and like the logistics you have to deal with when running it?
So behind the scene things that you have to do, any like setup or any additional stuff that maybe doesn't tie directly to the business itself that you have to do. Is there anything that pops out to you like that?
Accounting.
Payroll. There you go.
Marketing, again, marketing. That's why I have a business, because you have to market yourself whether you have a job or a business, and so I think you always have to be promoting yourself in your business. And people struggle with that sometimes. They're like, oh, I don't want to be too pushy. Be pushy and promote yourself.
All right, we got Drew. Go ahead. Come on up here. Yeah, come up a little bit. Just so Ms. Fisher can see you there. There you go.
How do you come up with a good name for your company?
Great question.
I picked the first part of my last name because the whole thing was too hard to say.
I picked my son's initials, so.
I actually hired someone online 23 years ago, and they did a great job.
Yep. So how did you guys come up with your names? Do you feel like your name is important to tell them what you do? Is it?
The word Novita means unique in Italian, and that's it. Nothing beyond that. Doesn't really have anything to do with my business.
Marketing instigators. I instigate marketing. I get people to do their marketing. And when I first started, my business name was Connections Business Services, which was extremely boring, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I just rebranded last year, and it tells what I do, and it's very accurate, and it's a little bit different too. So I'm the chief instigator at Marketing Instigators.
There you go. Very good. We got another one over there.
My question was, when you have a company, like you said, you want to have a smaller business, when do you realize that you want to sell your company and retire perhaps, or when do you come to the decision to have to let your company go totally?
Great question. So when you decide to leave the business for whatever reason, how does that go? Do you just shut it down? Do you sell it off? How do you get out of the business if you want to? It's a good question.
That's a great question. I'm going through it right now, sort of. I would say succession. You could just turn the lights off, but you want to pull out what you put in, I would say. It's not as easy to sell as you would. I don't know how you guys feel. It's not always easy to sell a business. So I think hire the right people, and hopefully you could turn it over to them and still pull things out of it.
Well, and you could also say too that there's a lot of people always looking to get into business, right? They're always trying to look for the best way to success with their own business, and maybe that is acquiring a previously successful business as opposed to starting it all on your own. That is another way to become your own boss. So, yeah.
And it kind of depends what kind of business it is. So if it's a business that you self-started, that's a service-oriented business where you're the face of the business, then you need to find another face of the business, or your clients have to be valuable if you want to transact it. Or as you said, you turn lights off. If you got investor funding, you're going to have more pressure to actually sell the business because that's why investors gave you money. So the one time we did that, there was a lot of pressure and there was some yes or no that we had to report back to on things. If you own a franchise, like if you get Subways, or I really don't know much about franchise businesses, but presumably like you could sell it to someone else who wants to have that franchise. So kind of depends on the kind of business.
We've got time for probably one or two questions. Let's see, we got like one more. Let's go one more. Yep.
What are some things you did in the...
Sorry, that's okay. Just come on up here. There you go.
What are some things you did in the very beginning to help market your business?
What were some of the things you did at the very beginning to market your business? Is that right? Great idea.
I
Good question.
networked. There's Chamber of Commerce where there's businesses that join the organization. So I was heavy duty into the Chamber of Commerce, but I think you need to network and you got to figure out who's your target audience and where do they hang out? Where do they hang out on social media and where do they hang out in person? And try to find as many of those people as you can, or are there associations that they belong to? But you've got to figure out your target audience and then what's the best way to reach that target audience.
Yeah, you have to be able to really communicate well, and probably Marketing Instigator's type of place that would help you. So you find people to help you communicate well, because you don't have to have all the skills when you run a business. You have to be able to find people to help fill in those things. But one of the first things is to be able to explain what your product is and who it's going to. That's going to help.
Yeah, I think you have to think like the buyer too, because I think we have our perception of what our business is, and a lot of times our buyers have a very different perception. And what they want is different than what you think you're offering, but it still could work out.
Okay, so sadly we are approaching the end of our time. If you do have questions though, we will have all the speakers right across in my room in 310. So if you'd like to come over there and ask some questions, we'd love to have you. First off, let's give a round of applause to all the speakers that came today. Thank you so much. It was awesome.